your time at ASIJ, 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're back on campus, 2020s.
Yeah.
What would you say has stayed alive in regard to that ASIJ culture for the past 40 years?
Again, I think the sense of community, that is huge because even to this day, my closest friends are probably the friends that I made at ASIJ,
Mm,
which, is kind of crazy. Yeah, even kids that, moved away after elementary school, I'm still very close with. And, every chance I get, if I'm near where they live or vice versa, we always get together. And especially with social media these days, you can, connect with anyone around the world. And that's easier now. Like, there's still the cycling of kids that come through international schools and are there for 3 years and then they move on to the next country. But it's a lot easier to keep in touch
mm,
now, you know. But I think these connections that they make at ASIJ and at international schools, there's some sort of a bond that is definitely a lasting bond. And even people who did not go to my school, if I find out that they have gone to other international schools and you meet as adults,
mm.
there's this sort of and this close connection that you feel very comfortable. You can relate on a much deeper level than other people who have not gone through this international school system. So
Welcome to the 73rd episode of Tokyo Alumni Podcast. Today, our guest is the director of the Tokyo Cancer Clinic in Japan. She attended ASIJ from 1976 to 1988. Upon graduating high school, she attended UC Berkeley for a bachelor's degree and then went on to earn her Doctor of Medicine at SUNY Stony Brook. She has practiced emergency medicine in New York and New Jersey for over 15 years. And in 2014, she and her family moved to Tokyo to help with her father's cancer immunotherapy clinic. Having lived outside of Japan for 26 years, she experienced a bit of culture shock, having to relearn Japanese and understand a completely different medical system. Her passion project is to help cancer patients navigate the Japanese medical system while coaching them to thrive and not just survive with lifestyle medicine and mindset. Welcome to the podcast, Minako.
thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's not up yet, but actually, it's two doctors in a row. So
Oh, wow.
this is a season of doctors so far, it seems
Awesome.
like. So I know I just did a quick intro, but maybe in your own words, if you could just tell us very quickly, what you do and who you are.
Mm-hmm. So this was kind of a long meandering journey to get here. But what I do now is I run the Tokyo Cancer Clinic, which is a private immunotherapy clinic. If you think about it, we all have cancer cells in our body, whether or not they're sort of precancerous cells or cancer cells, just because we're exposed to, lots of things that cause mutations and just our cells in general as they replicate, they, make mistakes. But the difference between people who actually do get full-blown cancer and people who stay cancer-free is really our immune system. So what our cancer does, in simplistic terms, is help our immune system to try and do what it's trained to do, what it normally does to help fight off cancer. So we take the immune cells that are within our bodies, from a blood draw, extract the immune cells and grow them out to great numbers, return them back into our bodies. And we also create cancer vaccines from our immune cells. So it's pretty interesting, cutting edge stuff that isn't really available in the United States and in Europe. So it's been really interesting part of my journey. So that's what I do now.
Wow, that's yeah, and you mentioned in your bio how you started as a doctor in the
Mm-hmm.
States. I guess we'll get right into it. I think
Yeah.
a big thing for international school students is like,
Mm-hmm.
where am I going to work at? And I know in the areas of like law and like
Mm-hmm.
things like doctors, it's very country specific, right? There's a lot of people
Yeah.
become lawyers in the States, and it's like, how do I get back to Japan?
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole other episode, I think, but it's a very niche way, right? It's a very small market.
It
But
is.
for doctors, how common is it for people who are earn their MDs in the States to start working in Japan.
Right. It's really, really a tough road. After I went to ASIJ, when I graduated, I moved to the United States. I went to UC Berkeley, same as you.
Yes,
And
100%.
yeah, and it was great. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be a doctor right away. I sort of studied art history and, psychology, and didn't think that I was going to be a doctor, but I actually did sort of at ASIJ. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then, you move to the States and you go from being a big fish in a tiny pond to a little fish in a big wide ocean. And then, you sort of go through this period of rediscovery and like, what do I really want to do? What do I want to be? So it took me a while to come back full circle to decide to want to become a physician again. I eventually did make that realization, which was great. And I didn't plan on coming back to Japan, in all honesty. I really thought that, I was going to stay in the US, and I became an ER doctor, which I loved. It was like, it was exciting every day. You see something new. You get to treat people from all walks of life, from, the moment they're born to, unfortunately, when they die, regardless if they're a homeless person, off the cities of New York City, or if they're a millionaire or a celebrity, you treat them all the same. And so I really loved that work. But I think after a while practicing, I started realizing that about 80% of what came through those doors were caused by poor lifestyle choices, whether it was drugs or alcohol, or, even infectious diseases, even cancer. Like 30 to 50% of cancers can actually be prevented with lifestyle. So then I started getting really interested in lifestyle medicine. And then from there, my father, who runs the Tokyo Cancer Clinic, has been asking me to come back to help him because he's 82 now. And so we decided to make the leap to Japan. I know I got a little off track there, and how hard is it, to go from being a doctor in the US to Japan? And it is really, really a long road. So I had to start relearning my Japanese. 26 years later, I hadn't used my Japanese at all. And again, going through international school, you don't master the language, especially if you're not studying it in school, which I was studying French for some reason. So relearning. It took a good maybe 3 years of being back in Japan to relearn the language. And I took all the language tests, the JLPT tests, in order to sit for the Japanese boards.
Yeah, so, you read my mind with the JLPT. Is that is your nationality, like your passport, not Japanese? Is that why you would have to take JLPT, or do you have to take it even then?
Even if you have the Japanese nationality, if your education was in English and you didn't go to Japanese high school or college, then you actually have to take the JLPT.
Interesting. Okay, that's actually really good to know.
So, I went through all that, and then you have to get all your documents translated and everything. And I took it to the ministry, and they said, well, okay, you have to take an oral board for medical boards and a written medical boards, which I was fully prepared to do. And then they said, well, and then we have a new rule that you also have to do 2 years of residency in Japan. Yeah. So, at that point, I'm already, trying to manage the clinic and working in the clinic, and not as a doctor, but more as run the clinic. And, I can't, unfortunately, take 2 years off to do a residency elsewhere and then come back. So at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to pursue my medical license here. So, what I do here is I run, because we do such specialized work in working with the immune system, we have a laboratory that does regenerative medicine. So to grow the cells and to create the cancer vaccine. So I've been focusing my efforts on research and doing, managing the lab and doing the lab. Of course, I miss seeing patients and talking to patients and helping them. So And I became really interested in lifestyle medicine. So I actually boarded, and there's a new medicine board actually of emergency of lifestyle medicine. So I actually boarded in lifestyle medicine, and we do a lot of coaching. So because everybody pretty much knows what to do, but it's really hard to follow the instructions on, what when you're supposed to eat well and sleep well and decrease your stress and exercise and all that. And these things all have evidence behind them to reduce cancer recurrence. But part of it is getting people motivated to actually implement those changes. So then I started doing health coaching. So that's a service that we also offer our cancer patients. That way I can sort of still see patients in a clinical setting without actually practicing and having a medical license here.
So you mentioned, things like getting enough sleep, obviously like eating nutritiously. Are there any sort of myths when it comes to, that might give you cancer? Like one I've always heard of is I'm a consumer of Diet Coke.
Okay.
It has that, that substance that's not quite sugar, but it sort of emulates sugar.
Yes.
And I'd say in my lifetime, at least probably 50 people have told me, oh, that gives you cancer. So is that a myth, or is there a point to sort of that artificial substance?
There have been studies, usually mostly rat studies and mouse studies, that if you do give them a lot of like aspartame or some of the sugar replacements, there have been links to cancer with that. I'm sorry to tell you. Okay. But most of the studies, they're done with really massive amounts. So, how that translates to humans and human studies, smaller amounts. I think, epidemiologically, I think if you look at it in the big picture, you can say, why is it that one person who chain smokes all their lives never get cancer, and then another person who's never touched a cigarette in their life does? You can't necessarily say one-on-one that there's a correlation, but if you take, a huge population and say, okay, well, this chunk of people, they smoke cigarettes, are they more likely to get cancer than non-smokers? Then yes, absolutely, there is a huge, out of the population that smokes, they are way more likely to get cancer. So, it's not 100%, but, with the best of our knowledge, people who do consume some of the artificial sugars, they might have a propensity to getting cancer.
Are there any other things like that come up, like that Coke question I just had, where people are like, does this give you cancer?
Yeah, for sure. And that's like one of the biggest things especially for cancer patients. They're always wondering like, well, what can I eat? Am I supposed to eat? Do I have to avoid all sugars? And so that's another big one, like regular sugar, right? They say, because if you go to the doctor and you get a PET scan, which is a type of CAT scan, and the areas that have higher metabolism light up, right? What a PET scan is basically a sugar metabolism scan. So what they do is they make sugar molecules radioactive, and then they inject it into your body, and then you do the CAT scan. So areas that light up, they say, okay, well, that's suspicious of cancer because that's where the cells are eating up all the sugars. So logically, you're like, okay, well, that means sugar must be bad because sugar must be feeding my cancer, right? So there are a lot of people who like go on a keto diet, for example. And there are some studies that say in some cases having a keto diet helps them. But again, everything's not so simple. When you look at the big epidemiologic studies, they said that, avoiding sugars altogether, it doesn't improve your chances of a cancer getting worse or having a cancer recurrence. But I think the takeaway or the logical way to think about it is that obviously you don't want to do too much of anything, right? Because the more sugar you take in, the higher your insulin levels rise, and insulin's actually a growth factor. So you don't want your insulin turned on all the time. The more sensible approach to take is not to sort of go to extremes and say, I'm never going to eat this, or I'm never going to do this, because, doing it once doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And completely avoiding it doesn't mean that you're not. But I think the healthier way to think about it is say, it's best to eat real whole foods that have a lot of polyphenols in it and antioxidants in it, and not eat too much of one artificial thing, because that's just going to trigger your growth factors and potentially, worsen your prognosis for cancer. But again, your body has different ways of assimilating all of this, so it doesn't necessarily mean, one thing's better than another. Just
when it comes to things like family history, how much of, I guess, the old question of sort of nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
So I remember, when I had testicular cancer, that was, the first thing I kind of looked up. Well, what did, my parents or grandparents? So is there sort of an element? I know there's disease like Graves' disease. That's like what, 50% genetic. But when it comes to cancer, how much of a role does that does genetics play?
There are certain cancer genes that run in families, and when you have them or when you get them from your parents, definitely your chances are higher. Okay, and I say higher, like 60%, 70% higher than a regular person, but it's not zero. And I think the difference between it is, again, how we live. And you could do all the things right and still get cancer, right? Obviously, it's not your fault. I think you have these genes, and then you have these on and off switch on your genes. It's something called epigenetics. And what determines whether or not certain genes are expressed or not expressed has a lot to do with your lifestyle, and it has to do with stress. I mean, something as esoteric as stress can actually turn on or off certain genes. So even things like Alzheimer's very strongly can run in your family if you have a gene called ApoE4, and if you have 2 copies of them, then you have a very, very high risk of getting Alzheimer's, like 60 to 70% chance. But at the same time, it means that 30% of them are not getting Alzheimer's. So, what's the difference? And what they're finding more and more is people who exercise a lot, who eat very healthy, and who eat well, who sleep enough. Getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep is actually key, especially for Alzheimer's and also for cancer, because that's when your immune system is repairing your body. Decreasing stress levels as much as you can. That really has a big connection as to what genes get turned on and what genes get turned off.
So you mentioned sleep, and I wonder if you have similar observations as I have. I feel like people in Japan really don't sleep. Has that been your experience so far?
Since COVID hit, people are getting more sleep, and that might be one of the only positives out of the pandemic. But sleep is huge, and especially in Japan, people don't get enough sleep. Sleep is super important. You can live without food for a month, right? You can survive without food for a month. You can only survive without sleep for 2 weeks. Everybody dies, basically, Yeah, and they've done, horrible, again, poor rats, right? Experiments. And they also cannot live more than 2 weeks. And part of the reason is, so much, we spend a third of our lives asleep, if you think about it, or we're supposed to anyway. And the less sleep that you get, the less chance our body has to heal itself and repair itself. And also the immune system, that's when it fully works, right? So that's when your body, your immune cells are patrolling your body. If it finds any abnormal cells or early cancer cells, that's when it gets rid of it. So the less you sleep, the more chance you have of getting cancer. And actually, the World Health Organization at some point even said that if you do shift work, like nighttime work versus daytime work, that is considered a carcinogen, because you actually have, when your circadian rhythms are flipped around, and also you don't get enough sleep, you actually do have a higher risk of getting cancer.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about you personally. So, you were in the States for a while, and I think not many of us have sort of the experience you have, where you really lived in Japan for a long time, in the US for a long time.
Right.
Came back, I think after 26 years, almost 30 years. What was the reverse culture shock like. And the reason why that came to my mind was because we were talking about sleep. And that was definitely, I was only gone for 4 years for college when I came back here. Obviously I'm gone again now, but that was one thing that just blew my mind is my colleagues were all sleeping 5 hours. And I was like, sorry guys, I'm not built like that. You know,
Yeah.
I will just like sleep. I'll come to work late if I have to. So anyways, and enough about me. So for you, what were some of the biggest things, you know, that you would, if you could go back, you wish you were mentally prepared for?
The commute, the train culture, right? I'd pretty much forgotten about that, being squished like a sardine and, you know, not having that personal space. That was a big one. I think also I felt like in the States, I was very used to people speaking their mind, I think. And I felt that when I came back here, it's like you are constantly having to sort of read between the lines because everything is said in a very kind of indirect, roundabout way. And you kind of have to figure out, oh, well, they're saying this, but they actually mean this, you know. And I think it took me a long time to get the nuances. And then also, like, I left when I was 18, you know, and when I came back, you know, as an adult and as a professional, it's very different because the language is different, first of all, right? I left speaking kid Japanese and I had to come back speaking, you know, proper, you know, business Japanese, which was difficult, I think. And then I guess, yeah, most of that, the nuance. And also just sort of being a female in the workplace, I think was different. No one like expected me to serve them tea or anything, but I'm sure, you know, for people who work more in an office setting, that might be very different. Also, if people talk about the way you look, the way you dress, your body shape, you know, how big you are, how little you are, you know, and I think when I came back, I was probably about maybe a good 20 or 30 pounds heavier. And people were just fine about talking about your weight to you, you know, and that was a bit of a shock to me.
Yeah.
So.
And when you came here, your kids were still quite young. So how did they adjust to sort of returning, or not really returning, but, you know, going to sort of a new home?
I think it was a good fit for them, right? Their dad is American, and obviously I'm Japanese. But where we were living at the time in New Jersey, there were very, very few Asians in our town. And, you know, they were little enough that they didn't notice or that they were treated differently or anything. But I think as they got older, they probably would have started to notice, you know, maybe they were sort of treated differently. And when we moved here, it was very intentional to be moving back so that they could attend ASIJ as well. Yeah, and one of the deciding factors is we were here for a visit, and it happened to be Spirit Day at ASIJ. And so I was there with my husband, and, you know, it's such a different culture, just the international school culture, you know, and there were high school students that were like walking arm in arm, like hugging their parents. And, you know, the older kids were helping out the younger kids. And my husband kind of looked at me and said, you know, what is this like strange world? It's like, you know, traveling back in time to the 1950s, and everybody's like very family oriented and happy and helping each other. And they're like, teenagers in America are not like this. And so I kind of looked at him and said, yeah, I know, you know, our kids are going to come here. And so that was really a big deciding point. So going back to how it was for them, I think it was a very good fit. You know, they right now at ASIJ, you know, there's a good percentage of the kids who look like them, you know, and I think it's kind of a comfort. And you know, they didn't have to deal with, again, the, you know, who am I, what am I, you know, this sort of identity thing. I mean, all kids go through it, obviously, but at least in terms of culture and race, that's like one aspect that they didn't have to deal with.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like, you know, it's another common theme, especially with the older alums, is where do you live in regards to, you know, your child's or your children's education, and, you know, how they will adapt or the difficulties they have. And definitely ASIJ does help because it does, as you said, sort of even if you are straddling cultures, as a school, it is already kind of straddling cultures as an institution. So it makes that transition, I think, very easy in comparison to people, go to the U.S. public schools or Japanese public schools.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a parent, how has your perspective evolved or changed of how you view ASIJ in comparison to how you used to look at ASIJ as a student or as an alum before sending your
Mm-hmm.
kids there?
Yeah, I think it has definitely changed a little bit. In some ways for the better. In some ways, I think they're trying to teach kids so that they are well-rounded, which is great. Sort of global learners, lifelong learners, which I think is all really great and important. I do feel like maybe kids feel this very heavy responsibility and weight also due to that, because they feel like they have to achieve so much and become accomplished. I don't know. I think there maybe is a lot of pressure that they're supposed to, go on and be great and do great things. And for some kids, I think that's kind of a big, heavy weight on their shoulders. So I guess there are pluses and minuses to that sort of approach.
Yeah, I definitely see that trend too. And I mean, I was in high school not that long, 16 years ago. And there's definitely, even between myself and the current high schoolers, it seems like things like the SAT, for example, it's always around, but, we just sort of practiced it on our own. There were camps and stuff, but now it's like seems like it's the norm is to, go to prep school and
Right.
outside
I
of
think
ACE.
there's a lot of pressure, to perform really well and to get into really great college and all that. And I feel like when I was going through it, we're kind of clueless to that. Obviously there was a little bit of a focus on it, but I felt like we could just grow up and just be kids and just enjoy life. Yeah, so I feel like maybe there's, in today's world, kids are feeling maybe a little bit more pressure in that manner.
I agree. I definitely see that myself. When obviously it's a little bit farther forward, but eventually then your children will have to, decide where their next step is going to be. As a parent, I feel like with ASIJ, the world is your oyster, right? Like it could be Canada, UK, US, Japan. Do you guys have any thoughts? I know it's a good 5, 6 years away until your oldest goes into college, but have you guys started to look into, the advantages and disadvantages of going into different countries?
Both of my kids probably would want to go to college in the US, just because that's, the other sort of half of their identity, and because all of their education has been in English. I think Japan's offering more and more, in terms of English track, universities here. So I think that's a great option. Even in medicine, actually, there's one school now in Chiba that you can go directly from high school, and it's like a 6-year medical school program where you end up getting licensed in Japanese. And the first 2 years are actually in English, and they actually do accept kids. I think there's been a couple of kids from ASIJ who've gone there now. So this is something that's, really brand new. Usually it's only in like international relations or non-STEM subjects that you could attend, like the ICU, Waseda, Sophia, those international programs. So things are changing.
That's really cool. I know for law, Hitotsubashi now has something too for like kind of what would be the sort of equivalent of a law school in the States. So yeah, that's really cool. There's these new options that didn't exist, just 10 years ago. So your time at ASIJ, 1980s, now you're back on campus, 2020s.
Yep.
2020s. And what would you say has stayed alive in regard to that ASIJ culture for the past 40 years?
Again, I think the sense of community, that is huge, because even to this day, my closest friends are probably the friends that I made at ASIJ. which, is kind of crazy. Yeah, even kids that, moved away after elementary school, I'm still very close with. And, every chance I get, if I'm near where they live or vice versa, we always get together. And especially with social media these days, you can, connect with anyone around the world. And that's easier now. Like, there's still the cycling of kids that come through international schools and are there for 3 years and then move on to the next country. But it's a lot easier to keep in touch now, But I think these connections that they make at ASIJ and at international schools, there's some sort of a bond that is definitely a lasting bond. And even people who did not go to my school, if I find out that they have gone to other international schools and you meet as adults, there's this sort of this close connection that you feel very comfortable. You can relate on a much deeper level than other people who have not gone through this international school system. So I think that's really fascinating. And I think that is something that's definitely lasted, and that my kids, their friends from this time at ASIJ will be lifelong friendships as well.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean with sort of you meet someone else who, went to St. Mary's, Seisen, all those schools. And it's like you're already, them. Like, even if they're
exactly.
like, a bit older or younger than you, it's like they went through the same system. It's like you can relate on so many levels, which is really, really cool. But yeah, this takes us to the end of the podcast. So I like to finish asking the guests, what's coming up in their life for the next few years, next few decades. So what is on the horizon, Minako?
Okay. I guess the one thing ASIJ did install me is the whole lifelong learning bit. I'm constantly learning more, changing. I have been really blessed in the last year to, meet so many people, especially the expat community in Tokyo. International school grads and things like that. And I feel like, again, they're my people, they're my community. And so I'd like to reach out and be more active within our community and help them in terms of, achieving their best health, being here for them as a clinic if they need it, and just trying to spread the word in terms of, there's so much that's within our power that we can do to, help ourselves with our health through lifestyle measures. So that's something that I'd like to continue spreading.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool the stuff you do. And Tokyo Cancer Clinic, where are you guys located? Yeah?
We're in Kudanshita, actually in Iidabashi, between Iidabashi and Kudanshita in Tokyo.
All right. So yeah, right in the center-ish part of Tokyo.
Yeah.
I was born in Iidabashi.
Near the Budokan, actually.
Yeah, near the Budokan. So that's really cool. You're going to be right there for any grads who are, in Tokyo. Well, again, thank you for being on this podcast. And hopefully I'll see you in person one day. I'm in Tokyo now and then. So
that would be awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.